Hello, welcome back to the channel. It is Dan, Nocturne Knives, and I want to sharpen this knife. Figured I'd make a video. So with that intro, let's get into it. This knife is a TW Price Reyne. This one just came in from a pre-order. Really enjoying this a lot. I took it and cut up a bunch of cardboard with it to see how the edge would do, how the steel would do, and I was actually very impressed. It held a good edge. It was still a working edge at the end of it. No edge damage, even with some dirty and gritty cardboard. And the ergos are really good on this. But anyway, the edge was dulled. It actually stropped back to shaving sharp again, but I want to sharpen it regardless. The edge on here is fine, but it's at a rather obtuse angle, probably 22, 23 degrees per side, something like that. In the trend of the last few videos, sharpening videos I made, I want to do a nice quick minimalist sharpening on this. I'll be using just one stone and I will use one strop, and we'll try and do this nice and quickly. And one of the points of these videos is to give you an insight into my process and my thoughts while sharpening. And the other point is just to show you that you don't need a bunch of things. You don't need to invest a bunch of time. You don't need a ton of fancy equipment to just put a good edge on a knife. And it doesn't have to be very time consuming, and it doesn't have to be excessively difficult or complicated. To start this, as always, I will cut off the apex of this. Just get past any of that fatigued steel, any of the overheated steel from the factory edge. For my use, it didn't seem to be that overheated, but still, there's almost always some edge damage from factory edges, so I'm just going to take a little bit extra off, and that should do it. That was just a silicon carbide sharpening stone that I have on hand. I just use the side of that a lot to cut apexes off. And then this is something I'm trying out. This is some honing oil from Stroppy Stuff. And I'm giving this a try in place of water with soap on my resin bonded diamond stones on recommendation from Stroppy Stuff. So I've been enjoying it so far. I've used it on several sharpenings. I can definitely say it contributes to less loading of the stone. The stone loads less quickly. The downside to the oil is it is a little bit messier than water, just because your fingers naturally get kind of covered in oil that has metal slurry in it. That's a little bit annoying, but the stone loads less. I don't know, I'm still figuring out exactly how I feel about it. So far, I do think I like it though. To start with this, I'm not too concerned with the angle. I'm going to shoot for about 17 degrees per side. The steel on this is MagnaCut. Knife is made by Bestech in China. In my cutting, the MagnaCut seemed to be heat treated pretty well. I was quite happy with its performance. So I think it's heat treated pretty well, and this sharpening, I want to see how I feel about it as well. So I'm going to go about 17 degrees per side. It doesn't have to be too precise. I'm kind of locked in. I'm kind of tuned into what 17 degrees feels like, because that's what I sharpen a lot of things at. Now here I'll also color in this edge with Sharpie just to show you guys what's going on a little bit better. So going for about 17 degrees. I'm just going to get into it. And that's what it's looking like. Yep, definitely lower than the existing edge angle, no doubt about that. My technique, as always, I walk through this in pretty much all of my videos. 2 fingers on the blade, at least on shorter blades. Handle grab it in a pinch grip like this, and then have the edge facing you. So instead of cutting into the stone like this, I like to push and pull in this manner. And then when I switch sides, I switch hands. So you take a look at the edge first, and got a nice edge bevel going on already. It's not quite apexed, but it's close. Go about the same angle here. Something that can help on a lot of knives is placing your pointer finger right near the heel of the edge, so that when you come up to heel, your pointer finger hits the stone, and that acts as a natural stop for the motion. So if I wasn't doing that, if I was going too quickly, I could accidentally slam the flipper tab or the frame of the handle into the stone. But if you put your finger here, you can just let that finger ride along the stone very lightly, and that gives you a guide, and it makes it easier to go faster around the heel section and not risk damaging the handle or the base of the blade or anything like that. Take a look here, looking pretty good. I can see a little bit of the old edge bevel there. You can see it shining differently right at the apex. So that's the old edge bevel. Don't need to grind a little bit farther past that. And I have not apexed or formed a burr yet. It's getting very close, very close. And sometimes I like to look straight down at the edge, and you can actually see if the apex is flat, you can see it reflecting light, and that can be a good indication of when you're close to apexing the edge, or what areas you have apexed the edge and what you haven't. So I'm just going to switch sides, remove a little more material. On the stone, this MagnaCut feels just fine. I wouldn't say it feels especially hard, but it doesn't feel bad at all. Okay, in looking straight down at the edge, I can see I'm getting close to the apex. And when I sharpen, I like to walk up to the apex evenly from each side. So instead of starting on one side and just going until I form a burr on the other, I like to do about 50% of the work on one side, and then switch sides, do 50%, and then go back and do like 25-25, and then 25-25 again, and walk up to the edge from each side. I find that this makes it easier to keep a consistent edge bevel from side to side. So if you remove too much material on one side of the edge, you'll actually make that edge bevel wider, because you sort of push the center line of the edge over, if that makes sense. If it starts even on each side and you remove too much material from one side, you push the center line over. But if you walk up evenly from either side to apexing, you maintain that edge bevel symmetry, which is mostly an aesthetic concern, but it's generally a good practice. Your edge bevels will be more even. Is there a functional impact to uneven edge bevels? No, not really. In the long run, maybe you'd start to wear a veer into the blade, like you as you sharpen up and up and up, you'd start to kind of veer off on one side. Is that practically a concern? Probably not. But for the sake of consistency, for the sake of having a decent looking edge bevel, I like to just walk up from either side. Yeah, so actually this MagnaCut, based on the rate of material removal that I'm experiencing, I would say it feels pretty hard, feels pretty wear resistant and decently hard. On other steels, you can go and watch my previous 2 videos sharpening the, what did I sharpen last? The Devo Stout in Vanax, and before that I sharpened the Null Knives Reiku in S90V. And those 2 sharpenings, they apexed incredibly quickly. And the Stout V2 is a slightly thinner grind, and Vanax is generally softer than MagnaCut. It is not heat treated as hard as MagnaCut normally is or can be. The range for Vanax is like 59 to 62 or 61. But it being slightly thinner and slightly softer, it apexed incredibly quickly. But even the S90V on the Reiku, and that's a thicker grind, apexed very, very quickly. So the speed at which this is going, or the length of time that is taking, tells me that this steel is pretty hard and pretty wear resistant from Bestech, which makes sense. Okay, I'm feeling light burr over almost everywhere on the edge. There's this one spot right here on the flat that still isn't burred, so I'm just gonna remove a little more material. I'm utilizing that finger here on the flipper tab to make sure I don't accidentally run into the flipper tab, and that allows me to go very quickly, even at the heel of the edge. Now, okay, I'm feeling burr. I'm gonna make sure I'm apex from both sides. So just because you form a burr on one side doesn't mean the other side is also apexed. You need to be able to, you need to apex from both sides. There we go. Yep, I'm getting burr all the way along the edge. That's perfect. Yep, consistency wise, it looks like I'm pretty consistent except for right up at the tip. The tip on this side is slightly wider than this side. So I'm just gonna focus on the tip here. It only takes a couple strokes on a coarse stone like this with direct focus at the tip. A little more. There it is. So tip on that side and tip on this side. Pretty good. Now on to the deburring stage. I'm just gonna take a few light strokes on each side, flip the burr back and forth so it gets a little fatigued and starts to stand up more in line with the edge, and then going to cut the burr off right there. That's a jointing technique that I learned from Hap Stanley. And then feel for the burr, don't feel any burr. Now I'm gonna get a little more oil on here, and now recreate the apex. So this sharpening actually took a minute. You know, even with a thin edge like this, I was dropping the angle so much from the factory edge, and with the MagnaCut being hard like it is, which is excellent, it took a minute. This is not a super coarse stone. It's a Venev F240, which is the equivalent to about 400 or 500 grit in a normal grit rating, JIS rating. So compared to, say, a Shapton Pro, this would be like a 500 grit, or a Naniwa, this would be more like 500. And so it's not super coarse or anything. And with this steel being hard, even though it's thin, took a minute. I had to lower that angle about probably 5 or 6 degrees. So it was a little bit slower going than previous sharpenings. At this stage, I recreated the apex with some gentle strokes, and now I'm doing deburring strokes with an edge leading motion here, and this is to make sure that any burr that I formed, remaking the apex, any small burr, that's the goal, is form the smallest burr possible as you reform that apex. Now I'm just making sure any of that burr is removed. I'm gonna feel for burr. Feel on either side. I can feel a little bit up there at the tip. So just gonna focus some strokes there. That's better. I'm gonna utilize now a trick that I learned from Stroppy Stuff, watching his YouTube, and that's the flashlight trick for seeing a burr. So if you shine a flashlight from the back of the edge, you can see a burr reflecting on the edge. Do you see that reflection there? Right at the apex, that is the burr, and I go to this section, and there's no reflection. Back up here, you see the reflection. Right at the apex, nothing, burr. Nothing at the tip there. Check the other side. I'm seeing a little bit of burr up the tip on this side. Not sure it's going to come through as well. But right at the tip, there's a little bit of burr. So I'm going to keep going on my edge leading strokes. And you want to do as many of these as needed until you remove the burr, because with very, very light pressure, essentially just the weight of the blade, doing one per side like this, you will not form a burr. You won't form a new burr. Edge leading strokes have a tendency to form less of a burr anyway, and with such light pressure and only doing one stroke like this per side, you're not going to form a new burr. Any small burr you do form will be instantly knocked off on the other side. And you're basically just flipping that burr back and forth, grinding a little bit on each side until you either grind it off or it breaks off. And you just want to keep going until you cannot detect any kind of burr with your fingers. Use the flashlight trick, flashlight test. Okay, I see no burr on this side, and I see no burr. Well, actually, there's just a little bit of burr right at the tip. Right at the tip on this side, very, very small burr remaining. Now, on the heat treat of this, the deburring has not happened very quickly. It's been a tricky, somewhat of a tricky, lengthy deburring. So that's not a great sign for the quality of the heat treat. Now, this could be affected by overheated factory edge, might still be in that overheated. Perhaps I probably didn't remove enough material when I cut the apex off. I really didn't remove that much. Okay, now when I look, there is no burr. Nope. Okay, we're burr free. Feels sharp, feels good. Aggressive. Yeah, so the reason for the difficulty in deburring could be caused by the overheated factory edge that I did not get all the way past. All right, and that is straight off the stone, no stropping. It's not a perfect edge. See, it's catching a little bit, but pretty good. Like, that's a solid, if you're after a working edge, that'll do it. Very aggressive. Very, yeah, you can feel the teeth and the bite on that. Actually, I just realized I forgot to do something. I never did any of my edge trailing strokes. I only did edge leading. So the edge leading is good for knocking off that burr. Then you want to come back with some very light pressure edge trailing strokes, and this will help restore any damage to that apex that you did during the deburring. With any of these deburring or finishing strokes, you can raise the angle slightly if you're having trouble hitting the apex. If you find yourself just not removing or flipping over that burr, raise your angle up a degree or two. That's going to help you hit that apex just a little more reliably. Now let's test this edge. Oh yeah, that is better. Yeah, those edge trailing strokes really help a lot. Yeah, that's that's cutting so much better. Yeah. Feels sharp. Ooh, that has a lot of bite. Really good edge. So now clean it off with some rubbing alcohol. And then last step is some very light stropping. This is a leather strop with Stroppy Stuff 1 micron compound. And my technique for stropping to find the angle is take the blade, hold it a little lower than you think the edge angle is, draw it edge leading like you're cutting into the leather, very light pressure, and slowly raise the angle up as you do that until it bites into the leather. When you feel it bite, drop your angle by about a half degree, and then that's your ideal stropping angle. Makes it very easy to find the correct angle. I'm just gonna do the same thing. And then just a few strokes, light pressure, just a little bit more than the weight of the blade. And that's all you need. Edge feels good. Yeah. That's really sharp. Very nice edge. There's a look at the edge, paying almost no attention to aesthetics, just going for it. I kept the bevels pretty even. That's the only thing I really paid attention to. As I said, at this F240, it's about 500 grit, so you're getting some good aggression. You can feel that bite on the edge. Yeah, it came out really nice and sharp. Goes through paper towel pretty easy. Yep. Not bad at all. That is my sharpening of the TW Price Reyne. Just a quick sharpening and to get my first impressions on the steel. Feels pretty good so far. Deburring was a little bit tricky, which could be a result of the heat treat, could be a result of an overheated factory edge. I'm not sure. The next one or two sharpenings will tell me more about that. Blade geometry and in use, I really have been impressed with this a lot. The geometry is excellent. It's like, I don't know, probably 14 thousandths behind the edge, and it's got a pretty thin blade stock, really good ergos. I'm liking this knife quite a lot. TW price, Reyne. Anyway, that's all I have. If any have any thoughts or questions about this knife or this sharpening, please feel free to drop a comment down below. While you're down there, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. I would definitely appreciate it. And with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.